Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Primary Science Podcast for this rather special little Christmas edition episode. Today is part one of our next unit on living things and their habitats. So we'll focus specifically on habitats and life cycles in years 2 and 5. So as you can all see, we are once again extremely lucky in every single way to have three incredible primary science expert guests joining us. So first up, I'd like to introduce the wonderful one and only Helen Bell. So
Hi.
Helen, what an absolute treat to have you with us.
It's lovely to be here. Really excited. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. And Helen, could I ask you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and the exciting things you've been up to recently?
Yeah, so I've been in primary education for 25 years now, in teaching, developing curriculum resources, doing science outreach and training in schools. I'm currently enjoying my role at Sheffield Hallam University alongside Catherine, training primary teachers in science and STEAM. I've recently had my second book published, which is called The Extraordinary Book of Science Experiments to Save the Planet, which is designed to help children think like a scientist to solve problems related to climate change.
Nice. I like that. I think I've just discovered perhaps what I might buy myself for Christmas this year. That sounds really good. Well, lovely to have you on the show, Helen. And our next guest, ladies and gentlemen, is the sensational Nicky Waller. So, Nicky, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Tim. It's mine too. I'm really excited about this.
And Nicky, I wonder if you'd just tell us a little bit about the many different parts that you play in primary science and what's been keeping you busy recently.
Yeah, of course. I've been a primary teacher for just over 30 years now. Wow. But I've been working for the Centre for Industry Education Collaboration at the University of York for 20 years as an advisory teacher for primary science. So that's a brilliant role because I get to work in lots of different schools, lots of different classrooms, work with lots of different teachers on so many different projects all across the northeast of England. Some of the projects that I'm currently working on is I'm delivering Focus for TAPS training. I'm also delivering some primary courses at the National STEM Learning Centre. And something else that I do is I write lots of lovely activities for primary science at the moment for the Royal Society Young Persons Book Prize, and also with the British pharmaceutical industries, some of their resources for schools.
And I wanted to say as well, Nicky, that I've really been enjoying another one of your books, A Creative Approach to Primary Science, which I purchased a while ago. So I can't wait to see how your upcoming projects take shape as well.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Nice. And everyone, our third guest today is the absolutely fantastic Catherine Hathaway. So, Catherine, what an honor it is to have you on the show.
Oh, fantastic to be here with these lovely people. Nice to see you all.
Absolutely. And Catherine, we are absolutely dying to know more about you and what you've been up to lately in the wonderful world of primary science.
So like Helen said, I work at Sheffield Hallam University. I'm the science lead for primary and early years initial teacher education. So I spend a lot of time talking and doing all things primary science with our undergrad and postgraduate trainee teachers. After my MSc in Biodiversity and Conservation, I worked as a teacher and leader of education for 20 years in the UK and in Thailand, as well as in China. And I love working with our trainee teachers. And I should say at this point, both Helen and Nicky's books are firmly on our trainees reading lists. So,
Okay, right. Make sure you'll get your copies now then. Nice. Okay. Great books, I have to say. Well, welcome to all three of you. I do feel incredibly lucky to be kind of surrounded right now by so much primary science greatness. So before we get diving into the habitats and life cycles today, I just wanted to say that you may or may not have noticed that something is missing in today's episode, in this month's episode. Sadly, I'm sorry, but there'll be no game this time. However, if you have been enjoying the guest games in this season so far, just please do head over to the comments below and let me know maybe which ones you liked the most, which ones you'd like us to play next. And if we get at least 10 different audience members commenting that they'd like games to return, then I'll make it happen and bring them back in the next episode. And I think I'd also like to bring back Helen, Catherine, and Nicky just for a game episode. I think that would be fun.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So all that said and done, let's get straight into it. Let's get the ball rolling. And to set the scene just a little bit, living things in their habitats begins properly in year 2. So children begin to tell the difference between things that are alive, dead, or, of course, never alive. So, Helen, if it's okay, I would love to start with you. How can we, as teachers, make a real connection to the children's experiences, to their lives, when it comes to this? How do we make alive, dead, or never alive, for want of a better phrase, come to life?
Yeah, so I think it's really important if you want your children to understand life, take them to where life is happening. So take them out of school, take them to a local park or woodland, anywhere where nature's active and children can see it in action. So when children are able to touch the soil, watching worms wriggling about, seeing birds swooping off to the nests, living things stop being ideas in books or online and they become real and exciting. So make sure children are armed with their cameras so they can take photographs and videos of what they see, anything that catches their eye. So beetles running under leaves or odd-shaped pebbles, flowers about to open, birds flying overhead, and record those observations so that when you get back to the classroom, you can turn all of those photos and videos into science evidence. So spark the curiosity, help children work out what is truly alive. Ask those key questions like, does it grow? Does it eat? Does it reproduce? Being out there, hands-on in nature, also gives you those opportunities as a teacher to teach children to be sensitive about living things. So, for example, treating living plants with care and treating dead creatures that they might come across with respect.
Nice. Yeah, that really kind of puts it in their hands, doesn't it? And, they have that agency, that control. I wonder, Helen, have you ever run into a scenario with this, depending on availability of a good nature space or, for whatever reason, there hasn't been a lot to photograph or record? And what might you advise teachers to maybe prepare in case that might happen?
I suppose it's taking care to decide on when you're going to actually do these activities. So thinking about the time of the year, the temperature outside, like for some times of year, it's going to be difficult to see a lot of mini beasts. So it's also about going out there and before you actually take the children, going out there yourself and exploring and making sure that you're taking them to a place where they're going to have lots of experience of seeing nature happening. So I think it's a case of, being prepared and making sure that you're taking children to a place that's going to be a really good experience for them, and at the time of year where it's going to be most beneficial for them to see as much life as possible.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Helen. And over to Nicky next. It would be really great to know that when you work with teachers or with the students, how do you help them move, beyond the worksheets here? Just as with Helen's idea, how can they make the alive, dead, never alive something purposeful, practical, and hands-on?
Yeah, I think it's quite a tricky one, isn't it, for children as young as year 2? So I think it's really important to build it, to structure it, and to scaffold it slowly and to build children's learning. So I would always initially just start with alive and not alive, first of all, before children can even think about, was it ever alive? Did it used to be alive? So we start off with the 2 categories, alive and not alive. And I love doing this with year 2. I have a puppet that I can get one hand into and really animate it and get it moving. And he's got quite messy hair. So when I arrive in the classroom, I do a quick scan to see if there's a child in the class that looks a little bit like the puppet. And I'll choose that child to come out and go, "What's your name?" And the child might say, "Oh, my name's Josh." And I'll go, "No way. His name's Josh as well. Like, can you believe it?" So we've got human Josh and we've got puppet Josh. And we know that human Josh is alive, but we know that puppet Josh is not alive. So we start thinking about the differences between something that's alive and something that's not alive. And we start thinking about all the things that an alive thing, a human in this example, can actually do. And I get the children to suggest, so what are some of the things that alive Josh, human Josh can do because he is alive? And it's really interesting that we get all sorts of ideas from the children, particularly when they're young children. They get a little bit fixated with movement. Human Josh can kick a ball. Human Josh can open a door. Human Josh can write his name. And I have to say, well, these all belong to the same category. These are all things that, when you're alive, one of the what we call life processes is movement. And sometimes you do have to nudge that on a little bit. So thinking about what can a live Josh do? So things like breathing air in and out, eating and drinking, and getting rid of waste. The children obviously love that one. Using our senses, growing. And then we start to make this list. Essentially, really, the children have generated this list by thinking and talking and sharing their ideas. So once we've got our kind of living things, very simple characteristics, then we can start to actually think about objects in the classroom, maybe cards with photographs on, and we use our list that we've generated, our simple characteristics, to then decide, is it living or is it not living? But the beauty of it is we're using the children's ideas, so we can keep going back to that list and seeing which of those characteristics apply. So just, get the children active, get them working practically, sorting into hoops, things that the children think are alive, things that they think are not alive, but constantly going back to that list of characteristics. And I think it's only when the children feel really confident with that, then we start to think about a third category. Is there anything here that actually used to be alive and it's not alive anymore? So what we do is we return to our original sorting and we have another go to reflect and resort. And I think by doing that, then the learning is much deeper. Shall I keep going?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's brilliant. Do keep going. I mean, there's so many real world ideas there. And I have to say, I really do like the idea. I zoned in there on the idea of making them making an initial grouping, that classification, learning something, and then coming back to kind of almost edit their list. And
Yes.
I just wonder, that's an idea that could be used more often in lots of different lessons and subjects. That's really powerful. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And then I think what's also then kind of the final stage in that is taking that learning out and about, go around the school, go out in the local environment, have a look then at categorizing real things that the children can observe for themselves. Is it alive? Is it once alive? Was it never alive? And I think, again, doing this at different times of the year, looking at things like leaves that have fallen off trees, particularly looking at things like deciduous trees that have lost all or most of their leaves in the winter time. Quite often, young children will say that that tree is dead, purely because its leaves have fallen. Getting the children to look at things like clouds and the sky and different kinds of animals and different kinds of plants.
Nice. Okay. Things that are all accessible to most of us. And over to Catherine next to show us how it's done once the children come towards the end of the unit. So, Catherine, I'm curious to know how you might, after a few lessons, guide the children to apply what they've learnt now about alive, dead, and never alive, and show that understanding in a meaningful way?
I think it's building really on everything that Helen and Nicky have said, and they've, Nicky really set it up so well there. Of now thinking then, how are they applying that learning? And I'd be focusing then on them articulating their understanding. So this could be done by asking them to create like an interactive class display on a tabletop. So where they're sorting and grouping objects that they found if they've gone outside, and they're then articulating their understanding about that in showing it in this display. So I'd use something like those talk tins that you can talk into and it can record the children's voices, so that they can articulate the reasons why they've sorted things into specific groups. And that would be linking it back to what Nicky's saying and linking it back to their original lists. But having something like that where they've created their own display to show their understanding, and having that available in the classroom over time gives them the opportunity to continue to engage with that topic. And that's when you do something like that, it gives the opportunity, a few days or weeks later for children to come in from playtime having found a new object and to continue those conversations of what it means to be alive. Because exactly like Nicky was saying, it's a hard concept for them to grapple with, and giving them that extended period of time to come back to their list and come back to their understandings and developing understandings is really helpful.
It's almost an idea of continuous provision, really, isn't it? And I really think that we should be doing that a lot more across science and other subjects too. And I love the idea with those glorious little talk tins. They work magic, don't they? And it's a great way to build those all important oracy skills too. Yeah. Something that keeps coming up on the show as really important. So yeah, thank you. And so that's the start of it. But I'd just like to, if it's okay, hang out in year 2 for just a little bit longer, because there's another key part of the learning here, which is habitats and microhabitats. So, now we know what's alive and not alive and never alive. We can identify where those living things actually live and maybe why they chose to live there. So over to Helen. I wonder if you have a favorite activity that helps children to connect with the why for this. Like, why does a creature live where it lives?
Yeah, so I think a really important idea for young children to grasp is that animals don't live somewhere just because they like it. They live there because their habitat helps them survive. So it provides their food, shelter, safety, everything they need to stay alive. And cross-curricular learning, something that I really value as a teacher. And the topic of habitats lends itself really well to making links across subjects. So in design technology, for example, children could design and build bug hotels or bird feeders using recycled materials, thinking about what those creatures need to help them survive. In English, they could make signs to go around school grounds, reminders to other children not to trample leaf piles or wildflower patches. And the signs could also provide information about what creatures live there. So it gives them a real kind of purpose and audience for the writing, which makes it really meaningful. But I think the key message running through all this is just really powerful and simple, and one that we want the children to pick up as early as possible, that we as humans can help nature by making these thoughtful choices, and they can realise that their actions can actually protect wildlife or they can harm wildlife. So it's just getting that really important concept across, thinking about habitats.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. It's an important realization to build, in the children, and it's not just making it connect to their lives in one way, but empowering them to actually take charge and make a change. So that's powerful stuff. Thank you very much, Helen. And over to Nicky. What's one of your go-to investigations for habitats? Something teachers could perhaps do easily on school grounds, or even perhaps without a lot of natural outdoor space.
Yeah, well, I absolutely love getting the children to work like a scientist. I want them to feel like a scientist and approach a question or a problem like a scientist would. And I want the children really to think about how could they find out for themselves? So where do different animals live and why do they live there? Going back to what Helen said, they don't just choose a place to live and that's it. They live there for a reason. And unfortunately, we can't go around and interview the animals and ask them, why do you live here? So we need to approach this scientifically and we need to think about how can we get hands-on, how could we make our own observations. And I think it's just a great way to get children knowing that some scientists study the behaviour of animals and they do that by observing animals in their habitats. So an absolute favourite of mine is I talk to the children about what a choice chamber is, and I ask the children to design their own choice chamber so that essentially we could put some little animals into some kind of box or container that's got different areas to it so that over an amount of time, 30 minutes or so, some insects such as woodlice could go into the choice chamber and they could spend a little bit of time in each part of the box, in each chamber, and they hopefully can decide for themselves which part of the choice chamber that they prefer. And that might give the children some information or some data to collect about the something like the conditions within each choice chamber, such as it could be damp, or it might be dry, or it might be dark, or it might be light, depending on what the children have actually designed. Some children in year 2 have kind of designed a shoebox that's got 4 different areas to it, and they've thought about how to make paper towels damp or how to still put a roof on it, but the light needs to come through, so it would need to be something like cellophane or some, transparent material. There's a lot of scientific thinking here for the children to really think about how can they do this and how can they find out for themselves. So we look at all the children's designs and we choose a couple and we actually make some choice chambers out of recycled materials. And then out we go out and about, and we might collect, if we can, something like 10 woodlice to put into the box. We might leave it for, say, 30 minutes to an hour. And then we come back and very quickly we remove any lids. We, as quickly as we can, take a photograph and record all the different places that our woodlice have decided to reside, if that's the word. And then we've got our own data that we've collected. And it really helps the children then to use that information to make their own decisions about why woodlice prefer certain conditions and why this might be.
Wow. I have to say, I would like to find out as well. That sounds
It's
great.
It is great fun.
Yeah.
And the children will say, what, and we're actually going to do it. So we're not just designing them, we are actually going to use our choice chambers. And it's so exciting to remove that lid and as quickly as you can take that photograph. And then you've got that data for yourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine it sets the groundwork for a lot of further questions and investigating as well.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's a really good one. Thank you. And over to Catherine. So, as we've sort of touched on already, injecting that sustainability into the curriculum is now an absolute must as well. It was before, but now it is an absolute must, since the new curriculum and assessment report came out just recently. So I wonder, how might teachers just weave that awareness into simple classroom practice at this stage and at this age, and in this particular unit, perhaps? Are there any practical activities or tips?
Yeah, I think as we look to weave climate change and sustainability across our curriculum, there's quite a few things that we need to be aware of. Firstly, that children and adults can have or develop eco-anxiety. It's been well researched, and I think we need to carefully consider how we're engaging these children who, of course, are the citizens of tomorrow, and these issues will feature heavily in their lives. We need to consider how we're engaging them with the topics without exacerbating fears, and to be aware of that. One of the key ways in which we can do this is by increasing their connection to nature. Like I said, these future citizens, they won't care about what they don't love. And with the changes in the way that we all live now, with increased screen use, increased car drop-offs, less time playing outdoors, we are less connected to nature than ever. And so if we want our lessons, like our lesson on recycling, to have an impact, we need to look into how we can connect more with nature. So that could be across, the whole curriculum, across the whole school day, and it's not necessarily an easy fix, but it's definitely something that we can give due consideration to. And then to focus on that specific year 2 topic of habitats, there's lots of ways within this topic that we could take children outdoors, and Helen and Nicky have talked about some of them, and I'm sure that teachers are doing this. But what we're trying to do with the living things topic is help children to see the links between living things. All living things are part of ecosystems, and there are interactions and dependencies there. And I think as teachers, it's really important that we bear in mind the national curriculum is set up like plants, animals, living things. And it gives that kind of a false sense of separation when actually there's those interrelationships there. And over time, we want children to kind of make those links. And that is the key to understanding sustainability. So within like the year 2 topic, we might be teaching about the simple food chains and how those food chains might include humans. So that typical sun, clover, cow, human food chain. We can take that and then add in them learning about the pollinators needed for clover to grow. So bumblebees, honeybees, some of the solitary bees. And now we're considering it in a much more real way with those real interconnections. And then if we start to consider about the declining bee numbers and then think what impact might that have on the food chain, we can start thinking about these issues of sustainability. And like I said at the start about eco-anxiety, the key mitigating features of this are hope and agency, giving children agency. So at this point, doing something proactive aimed at improving bee numbers would be a good idea. So creating the bee hotels for solitary bees and putting them in an outdoor space. And that's something that all schools can do no matter how much space they have outside. But in that way, what we're doing is we're helping children make those interconnected links between plants and animals and connecting the ideas across those year 2 topics. We're also considering aspects of sustainability, and we're helping children see that they do have agency and then they can care for the planet in meaningful ways.
Yeah, thank you. That's really important. An incredibly crucial topic. And, thank you for starting us off there and giving us a wealth of ideas. I wonder, Catherine, if you know of any great resources, online or otherwise, that might help support teachers and schools with this kind of work. For example, like a lesson on improving bee numbers or building those like bee hotels, because I really think this is something a lot of us are going to want to do.
Yeah, I think the Primary Science Teaching Trust has got a brilliant resource, Did You Know, which has got lots of different resources there. Have you seen it before? It's really good. And it helps bring cutting edge research to children in a child-friendly way. It helps them develop their science capital, see other scientists and what they do. But also lots of them are linked to climate change and sustainability. So I think that's a real good go-to resource.
Nice. Okay, thank you. And I'll share a link to that in the description below the video. Thank you. Okay, so let's fast forward perhaps a few years to year 5 now, as we're going to cover the other year groups in next month's episode. So here, children sort of begin to study those life cycles of mammals, amphibians, insects, and birds, and the interconnections between them. So Helen, from a creative teaching angle, something you're an expert in what ways could we make life cycles really, really clear, practical, super hands-on?
Yeah, so I think it's watching real life cycles unfold. There's nothing that beats that, those true awe and wonder moments in science. So seeing the transformation of a butterfly up close, or a chick cracking through its egg when it hatches. It's fascinating for children. It's also thrilling for us as adults too. It's those moments when the chrysalis is kind of trembling before the butterfly emerges, or the first few cracks in an egg when a chick's about to hatch, they're really powerful, unforgettable experiences. They give children a chance to really understand life processes and not just find out firsthand. So the more that we can give children those experiences, the better. We do have to think about ethical responsibilities, though, when we're bringing any kind of living creature into the classroom. So, for example, there are lots of commercial butterfly hatching kits available, and it's about us as teachers really modelling that care and respect for living creatures, thinking about when we've got the butterflies and they're fully grown, ready to be released, is our local area, our local environment, local temperature, is it suitable to let the butterflies go free in that? Also, what impact might the butterflies have on the local ecosystem? So I think it's important we make those considerations. But there are lots of opportunities to watch life cycles happening from afar, so from a remote position. For example, the University of Sheffield's live peregrine falcon webcam is fantastic. It lets children follow through the webcam over a period of time, follow a life cycle from eggs that hatch to fledglings, and they're not disturbing a thing there. So they're seeing that life happening in real time. And whether the experience is in real life or whether it's remote, it just brings that alive for children and gives children that chance to really see life cycles happening in real time and experience that excitement.
Yeah, absolutely. It beats a worksheet every time, eh?
Yes.
Nice. Okay, thank you, Helen. And over to Nicky. I wonder if you could share with us an investigation that you've discovered or created that always gets those pupils excited and, exploring life cycles.
Yeah, of course. I can't take credit for this one, but this is a really great activity from Thinking, Doing, Talking Science. If you've heard of that national initiative, it's run now by the Primary Science Teaching Trust in partnership with the Oxford Trust. And it's just one of my absolute favourite activities where children actually get to create their own animal out of modelling dough. So it can be absolutely anything, be completely creative, and they've got all sorts of weird and wonderful ideas, but can they make it out of modelling dough? And then the children are challenged to just think and talk about the structure of the animal and any particular features it has. This is moving into year 5 science now, so they can include any adaptations that the animal might have to help it survive in a particular habitat. And also we want the children to be able to classify which animal group does their fictitious animal belong to. So they need to know and remember characteristics of different animals belonging in different animal groups. So there's a lot of thinking and a lot of science and a lot of sharing of ideas. And the children can absolutely have some time to carry out their own research as well, because we're going to move this on now to get the children thinking about what might the life cycle be of the animal that they've created. So we're going to encourage children to research some life cycles, obviously, of real animals belonging to their animal group. So if they've created a reptile, then we want the children to research different animals that are reptiles. And we also then want the children to think about that model that they've made, at what stage in its life cycle is it at right now? So has it just been born, or is it an adult animal? At what stage is it at? So we really get the children thinking a lot about not just creating a model animal. Why is it at that particular stage of its life cycle? So we want to provide opportunities for the children to model those other stages as well. They might work in pairs, they might work in a small group, but this is an afternoon of science. There's lots of researching, observing, talking, sharing scientific ideas, lots and lots of learning going on here. But what I have to say is that the actual statutory objective for year 5 is not just to learn about the life cycle of different animals belonging to different groups. This is the bit that sometimes gets missed out, where we actually want the children then to compare the life cycle of their animal group, maybe with a partner's animal from another group, or somebody else in the class, because actually the focus here is, can the children describe the differences in different animals' life cycles? So that's another really great way of looking at it. Well, let's have a look at the animal that I've created. Let's have a look at the different stages in its life cycle. Now, don't forget, let's compare that to other life cycles of other animals. They're different. There's all sorts of different stages in different animals' lives. So kind of to get that recorded, to get some assessment information, we might get the children with 2 hoops, or creating a Venn diagram for themselves, and we want some information about, let's say it's a mammal's life cycle and an insect's life cycle, and then where the 2 hoops intersect, then we really want the children to think about, are there any similarities as well in those different life cycles.
Thank you very much there, Nicky. Nice. Another creative idea. And I do agree. I think, especially in my classroom as well, the kids always love a bit of model making as well, don't they? Especially when they've got that freedom to choose which animal they do, or make their own animal up. And I always find it's really good as well, because you can see in physical form how they're thinking. And it really gives you a chance to have a conversation with them and help guide them along. I wonder, with that idea, sometimes it's happened to me as well. Have you ever found that there might be a particular animal life cycle or a particular choice that the children might make that might end up being a bit more tricky than others? And if so, how might you deal with it?
Yeah, it's a really good question, that, Tim. And I think that from as early as year 1, children already start identifying and naming animals that belong to different animal groups. And it tends to be, mammal, fish, bird, amphibian, reptile. But there's actually no mention of insects. And then suddenly we've got this year 5 objective that includes insects. So we think, do we actually know about insects? Do we know about their characteristics? And we know that there's a lot of misconceptions where not just children, but adults, might refer to any creepy crawly or any kind of mini beast, or a spider is an insect. So I think it's really important before doing this that we just revisit the learning from as young as year 1, and we just absolutely double check that children have got that good knowledge about the characteristics of different animals belonging to different groups. And I do find that insect group is a tricky one. And you don't want children to, research the life cycle of an animal and spend a lot of time on this when the animal isn't an insect. So, yeah, it's something that's cropped up quite a bit, actually. And with that sometimes complete metamorphosis, there's a lot of tricky vocabulary in this as well. So I would definitely say the insect group is probably a trickier one. So just be mindful of that when you're planning the activity and when you're introducing the activity to the children.
Yeah. Would you say sort of all invertebrates might be difficult as well? Because I've certainly found that when teaching vertebrates versus invertebrates, vertebrates are just, you've got your 5 groups, all good, everybody knows it already. Invertebrates, okay, what
I
is
know.
going on here?
Yeah, hopefully you might touch upon it in year 3 when learning about skeletons, animals including humans, internal skeleton. It's not an actual statutory objective to then learn about
Okay.
different animals and different skeletons, but it's a really nice place to really think about it in that unit of work as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering all my questions there, Nicky.
All right.
Okay, and over to Catherine. How could we bring this unit just back to that center of it all, the why it matters in the first place? How do we let them see how these life cycles of all these different animals and their interconnectivity are important and like how they relate to their lives in some way?
Yeah, I think when we're thinking about why it matters, I think it's beneficial for many reasons to help children empathise with animals and see things from an animal's perspective. Like they matter in and of themselves, irrespective of humans. So, considering, for example, how might a tadpole feel learning to breathe for the first time? And that's where drama and role play and creativity have a really good part to play in the science curriculum. I think as well, like seeing the interconnections between plants and animals is really important. So the development from the simple food chain to the food web can really exemplify that. The food web game that you've probably heard of, but I think is a really good one to highlight this, and it helps bring the learning to life rather than a PowerPoint or a worksheet. So if children like standing in a circle and they've all got their picture and their label representing an animal or a plant, and one of the children is the sun and starts with a ball of string, and this sun goes and gives I'm the sun, I give my energy to a plant, and then that plant, then I'm clover, I give my energy to an animal, and you're going through creating that food chain. That ball of string then goes back to the sun and then creates another food chain, and that continues until everybody is all interlinked. And it's just a really good way of helping children see those interconnections and make it really tangible for them. So that's one way of doing it. I also do think it is important, like you're saying, Tim, for them to see the importance and link to themselves. So again, it's that seeing that interconnection. So looking at the life cycles of butterflies and then exploring how butterflies are pollinators of the food that we eat. Finding out that spiders eat mosquitoes, which I know will be incredibly important for you in Thailand, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. They are. Yeah, big time. Um, and it's really funny you gave the example as well with the food chain game because we did something similar in my class earlier this term with food chains. And yeah, I really agree. The children absolutely loved it. And we made these big stickers as labels. And once they had the idea, the way that you said to present it, they just kept on going with it. They could have played it all day. They kept wanting to they changed which animal they were, or can I be a producer this time, and then see how that affected everything in the chain. So another really important and sometimes quite challenging objective in this year 5 unit relates to that process of reproduction in plants and animals. So Helen, I wonder if you could help us and let us know how we could show the children in no uncertain terms that it's really, really important that they learn how plants and animals reproduce.
Yeah, so I think it's really important for children to gain that understanding that living things don't just appear. Life comes from life. So those big concepts of birth, growth, death are really huge ideas for children to kind of contend with. So we do need to introduce these with sensitivity and care. Life cycles generally tap into children's curiosity. They have lots of questions. At year 5, they will have lots and lots of questions that they want to ask. It also encourages empathy. It helps them appreciate how delicate life is, how interconnected it is, and also how remarkable life is when you're thinking about birth. So as their understanding grows, the language is going to develop. They get this rich vocabulary, and it helps them to explain what they're seeing in the world around them. It helps them to make a sense of changes that are happening in their own life and changes that are happening in their own bodies too. So learning about reproduction and life cycles, it is obviously biology, but it's more than that. It's helping children to understand themselves, understand others, and understand just this ongoing story of life that's kind of going on all around them. So really, really important.
Yeah, it is important. So they really must realize that. Absolutely. And over to Nicky. So what about sort of recommended practical classroom investigations here for this one? Something that just genuinely helps children see reproduction happening. And is there anything teachers maybe should avoid?
Yeah, I'm going to particularly focus on that last part, Tim, if that's okay. Things for teachers to avoid. In my opinion, I think that when I've ran CPD for teachers, and it may have been looking at things like life cycles, or it might have been Earth and space. And teachers have said, "Have you got any investigations?" And I've said, "These are all practical investigations." Yeah, but have you got any like experiments or any investigations? And you think, I think there might still be a little bit of a focus on we're only doing a practical if it's a fair or a comparative test investigation, which I think is absolutely not the case. There's so many different ways of inquiring, and we want our children to know that, you know, we're not just working like a scientist if we're carrying out a fair test. There's lots and lots of different ways of finding answers to our questions. So I think in this unit of work, particularly looking at things like animal life cycles, don't worry at all that we're not doing kind of the standard, you know, practical experiment or a hands-on fair test investigation. Don't worry about that at all. And just remember there's lots and lots of different types of inquiry. And when we're learning about reproduction and life cycles, these are fantastic opportunities for the children to observe things changing over time, you know, long periods of time, not just, you know, an ice cube melting over a number of minutes, observation over time, and children really focusing on how to carry out really good quality research, looking at all sorts of different secondary sources of information, and just really developing those scientific skills of what makes a good observation and how do we carry out research and how might we summarise what we've learned and what we've found out. And I think there's some amazing opportunities here within this unit to develop a really broad range of children's working scientifically skills. Not to be worried, there are many other units of work like forces and materials where you might be doing those comparative and fair tests, and just really embrace the opportunities here to really immerse yourself in different types of inquiry. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. I think a big part of it is, you know, comfort zone. I think a lot of us are so comfortable, are so used to fair tests and comparative tests, and okay, we have a variable, change one variable. That sometimes, yeah, we do forget that there are different types of inquiry. And one of my fantastic previous guests as well, Jane Turner, and some of her colleagues wrote a book not long ago called "It's Not Fair, or Is It?" And I think that's a really good read around this idea as well. Yeah, and it's just, I think we should spread that awareness almost that there's more to life than fair testing. Nice.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
Yeah.
And that is an excellent book as well. And I love how it gives lots of examples for really young children right through to year 6 and beyond. It's great.
Absolutely. And over to Catherine. I wonder if you have any like just go-to activities towards the end of the unit that help the children to bring out what they've learned in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I mean, giving children an audience is always a really good way of creating a meaningful and purposeful end of unit outcome. So, especially when they get to be in the role of expert and showcase their understanding. Using a younger audience is a really good way of doing this. And obviously in schools, we've got lots of younger year groups that can be used in this nice way. I think a good way of doing this in this topic is creating a narrated time-lapse video of a life cycle that they have been observing over time. So throughout the topic, they can be collecting images and information, and then at the end, creating a finished narrated time-lapse video. And that links exactly to what Nicky said. That's the type of inquiry is observation over time. And the skill that they'll be using there is probably interpreting and communicating results. So I think that's a really nice end of unit activity.
Nice. Thank you very much, Catherine. And there you have it, folks. Like that brings it full circle. I have to say, I am really quite enjoying this episode, and you know, it's been another absolute masterclass in primary science. So I'm so sad to have to say that we're slowly creeping towards the end. However, before we wrap up, I'd just love to give each of you a chance for a closing reflection of sorts. Maybe one thought you'd like teachers to take away, when planning lessons on this unit. So, Helen, I wonder if we could start with you.
I think just reflecting on it, it is a real privilege that we as primary teachers get to introduce children to the concepts that we've talked about today. We're the ones that help them experience those wow moments in nature, those times where their eyes widen and the world suddenly seems more exciting. It's amazing to witness, but also it helps children to build that emotional connection with living things. And that's something that we do need to nurture with children as they move through the year groups. We need to help them develop their empathy towards living things and their appreciation for the natural world. And that's something that we want them to hold on to as they leave primary education and as they go on to obviously be the future adults, the future citizens of the world. So I think that's just something that I think we should feel really grateful for as primary teachers.
And Nicky, could you let us know your final takeaway?
Absolutely, yeah. I think we've all talked about the importance of children learning by doing as much as they possibly can. And I think sometimes you might think that these units, there's not so much of that to do, but there's so much to do, isn't there, as we've all been talking about. So just those opportunities for children to make their own observations, noticing things growing and changing across the school year, looking at plants, looking at animals in the local environment. Don't forget things like visitors coming into school to talk to children as a secondary source. If you can go out on an in-person visit, or maybe you can organise some kind of virtual visit to a farm during lambing season, or if you've got the opportunity to purchase something like a hatching kit so that the children can actually observe these things for themselves in school. And then finally, I just hope that the focus for these units can be as the children as active participants, and I want the children to be guided by the teacher in purposeful practical work. It can be done in these biology units.
Thank you. And Catherine, what would you like all of our listeners to know?
Really building on what both Helen and Nicky have said there, and linking to what I said earlier, I think it will come as no surprise that I'll talk about nature connection and getting children outside. I think in regards to sustainability, the changes that need to happen are inside of us all, how we think and how we feel about nature. Miles Richardson and Carly Butler from the University of Derby have done some really good work on this, and they've got a nature connection handbook that helps us linking nature with school life. But I do think that we're in a really privileged position as teachers in regards to this. We can have an impact wider than ourselves in regards to sustainability, and taking the opportunity and the responsibility to engage children in the planet through being in nature is a wonderful way of doing that.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, I have to say, it has been an absolute honour and a privilege to speak with you all and have you share your expertise with us really so generously and freely. And just saying I'm grateful doesn't really do it justice, to be honest. I'd just like to take a moment to say just the biggest thank you to all of you, our wonderful guests, Helen Bell, Nicky Waller, and Catherine Hathaway. Without you lovely people, your incredible wealth of knowledge and generosity, this episode would just basically be me sitting in front of a camera, just not saying very much. So thank you very much to you.
Thank you for asking me to be involved, Tim, and thank you for sharing your expertise, Nicky and Catherine. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. It's been so nice to meet and work with you today. Any excuse to spread the love for primary science. Thanks so much for inviting me. And Tim, I want to know more about these games next time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'll second that. Yeah, thank you guys. It's been really fun to talk about all things nature and biology. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And that's a wrap, everyone, for Living Things in Their Habitats Part 1. I really hope that everyone's taken something meaningful from this episode. I know I have, and how can you not, really? So please do share this episode with your team, with anyone you think it would be useful to, and let us know as well in the comments which unit you'd love to be featured next. And of course, if you want those games back as well. So I think we've got 3 votes for games back already. And until next time, everyone, thank you so much for listening, and bye for now.